On February 18th, however, progress toward a peaceful settlement collapsed. An estimated 20,000 prisoners marched on the Parliament building to push for reinstitution of the 2004 Constitution. They were confronted by security forces using live ammunition, rubber bullets, tear gas, and flash grenades. Some of the protesters were also using firearms. At 4 p.m., the Interior Ministry and SBU announced that if by 6 p.m. the disturbances have not ended, we will be obliged to restore order by all means envisaged by law. The ensuing attack by police pushed the protesters back onto the Maidan, where barricades finally held. By the day's end, at least 18 people were dead, including several members of the security forces. The violence of February 18th caused both sides to harden their positions, even as government and opposition leaders frantically sought to avoid further bloodshed. After this violence in Kiev, the use of force also increased in other cities where demonstrations had been taking place. In several western Ukrainian cities, people occupied regional administration buildings, attacked police stations, and seized weapons. Ukraine was approaching a situation in which both protesters and government forces would be wielding firearms. Equally important, the seizing of local police stations and administration buildings all over Ukraine initiated a tactic that was to be turned against the anti-Yanukovych movement very quickly after he fell. On the evening of February 19th, the foreign ministers of France, Laurent Fabius, Germany, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, and Poland, Radoslaw Sikorski, negotiated with Yanukovych for several hours, trying to find a compromise that would avert more violence. However, Yanukovych would not accept the demand for early elections, which protesters saw as a compromise from their demand that he step down immediately. While scheduled elections were, by this time, only a year away, the opposition feared that Yanukovych would use any respite to clamp down further and to rig the election. Early on February 20th, protesters attacked a police line at the southeastern end of the Maidan. Interior Minister Zakharchenko announced that he had signed a decree authorizing security forces to use live ammunition against the protesters. After protesters broke through a police line, the police opened fire, both from on the ground and from sniper positions. By day's end, another roughly 70 protesters had been killed and over 500 wounded, and several more security forces had been killed. The UN later reported a total of 108 protesters and 13 law enforcement officials in Kiev from November to February. There is considerable speculation concerning who was shooting at whom on February 20th. There have been allegations that a third force was shooting at both sides, trying to spur on the conflict, from high in the Hotel Ukraina, overlooking Institutska Street and the Maidan. Some point to Georgians, some to Ukrainians, and some to Russians. The chaos of the day and the intense efforts at disinformation that have ensued have made it impossible to disconfirm these theories.